Welcome to the Circuit Rider Bible Study with Andy Brink.
Wherever Sean's walking, he'll usually, whatever that last song is usually what he's going through. And Sean's going through some hard places in his world, just as some of you are going through some hard places in your world. But it continually reminds me as he sings that song, suffering weans us from this world. And you can tell just whatever it is that Sean's going through and Rochelle is going through, but just in that song that he chose today to sing, his eyes are on, listen, this is going to be past. And one day, you can hear in the song an eternal perspective that as hard as this is, one day this is going to be past. Now what happens when everything's going our way? You know, we're usually singing something a little bit more lighthearted, am I right? Because our mind begins, that's one of the things, the processes that suffering does in our life. It connects us to eternal things because we begin to realize, this world's passing away and this world is hard. And there are things that are hard we have to go through. Let me ask you a question. Let's say God said to you today, I'm handing over to you all of my power.
Cool.
All right, now think about that. What?
Don't buy that to me.
There might be some things happening. Zap! And think about in relationship to that, when you look at Genesis, he said, let there be, and there was. The power that I'm talking about is the power of the spoken word. Wham! Whatever you say, it shall happen. Now, just thinking in your mind internally right now, not out externally, but internally, what would you do with that power? Now, I can tell you some things that come to my mind that we've probably thought these things, but you don't say them outwardly. I would fix suffering. The people that I love that are hurting, I would fix their problem. I would make there to be no more abortions, or I would remove evil from this world. I would take heart out. All the things. How many of us have thought in our mind, though we know we shouldn't say it, if I were God, I would do this differently. Am I the only one that's ever thought that? God, why do you allow this? Yeah. And let me say this. If in your mind you think to yourself that you would do things any other way than He's doing them right now, then you're judging Him as being less than and yourself as being greater than.
Right.
See, the problem is we don't have all the information in front of us.
That's right.
And the things that look awful and sorrowful and painful, God has allowed those things to happen. Because the one thing, again, you can set this on a shelf. I don't know if it's doctrinally or theologically correct. But the one thing He cannot do with His power is have passionate love. What? He can't make you love Him. That's a choice that you have to make. If He made you love Him, then it wouldn't be love. And so He allows choice. Now, I believe, probably if I fall into a ditch, I believe more in the sovereignty of God than anything, but I also believe in choice. And it's a mystery to me how they work together. But I believe every bit of the fact that they work together. But God has allowed choice. So He has allowed suffering. Because what He wants from us is passionate love. Amen. He wants us to choose to be in love with Him. Now I was at this men's group Monday night. And a wonderful men's group. Just a group of men that from various backgrounds who were really solid, and they're all from different backgrounds, but just you could tell there's a good companionship, and they really wanted to hear the Lord, and so in that place, I remember where was I going with that? But I was it's like right there on my edge of my. But as we were talking about passionate love, Romans 8. I mentioned that here too. If I was to ask you, what does Romans 8 tell us? Well, I can think of 3 verses immediately that would come up without question. All things work together for good to those who love God and called according to it. There's no condemnation, and there's nothing that should separate from the love of Christ. And all of those are absolutely true, but the scriptures that aren't mentioned, for instance, we are like lambs being led to the slaughter, and we are daily being given over to death. Oh Lord, bring me home. We walk through those times. And there's times when we're like a lamb being led to the slaughter. But in the place of passionate love, when your heart has been met with Him, Lord, you become worth it. And that's what He's really saying there in Romans 8. He said, listen, through all these persecutions, through nakedness, through peril, through hunger, through need and lack, through all these things that happens, we overwhelmingly conquer. Why? Because of Him who loved us. I am more than a conqueror because I have been persuaded that nothing shall separate me from the love of Christ. And He's saying, listen, you are going to walk through those things. Not because God's trying to push you down and you just deserve it because you're just an unworthy person. You're going through them because He is removing the dross from your heart. And there's no other way for that to happen. And you know what? We fight against it like hell.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm going to tell you right now, in my mind, I think to myself, my life would be peaceful and wonderful if you guys would just line up. But God doesn't let it work that way. And all of a sudden, somebody becomes the irritation of my life. Or situations become the irritation. And I'm brought to that place. God, you're all I have. And I trust you. There's only one way. And again, y'all have heard me say this a million times. I'm going to say it again in light of where we're going tonight. This is the filter through which I look at life. Right or wrong, I'm telling you right now, when I hear people's problems, this is what it's filtered through. When I walk through my own trials, this is what it's filtered through. When I look at the world around me, this is the filter through which I see it all. 3 things you have to be convinced of is His sovereignty. The world is not spinning out of control, nor is your life. Mm-hmm. And there are things going on in your life at times that you do not like, that aren't fun, that lead you to very difficult and hard places. But I know this, that God's involved in it. He has allowed it for divine reason and purpose. So my outlook in life, I don't see life. The Scripture says in Psalms, His sovereignty rules over all. Ephesians 1:11, all things are working according to His purposes. Oh, my mind, I get mixed up. Ephesians 1:11, I can't say it now, better look it up. All things are working after the counsel of His will. All things. Not some things, all things. Even the political system we have. Even the things that you see playing out, whatever side of the fence and line you are, all things are working after the counsel of His will. There's a divine purpose in it. Next thing you've got to be convinced of is His wisdom. You are not the judge. You don't have the information. You don't know really what God's up to. And I've told the story before. I had something in my mind that I thought was best. And I thought I knew best. And I wrestled with God. This is the right thing. This is what and I wrestled for 3 or 4 years. Let this happen. I know you're in this. And one day just crying all by myself. God, why? I can't keep going on like this. And he said, Andy, when you're ready to say, not my will, but yours be done, there'll be healing for your heart. You're going to have to let go. And I had to let go for healing. And you know what I didn't see? I didn't have all the information in front of me. His best was down the road. And I'm going to tell you, there's not a person that I know of, and those who know me would say the same thing, that could be married to me other than Rebecca, that could put up with me in my life, in my world. You know, I didn't know that years ago. God did. And life wasn't working the way I thought it should. And I wrestled with him and wrestled with him until I had to finally let go of what I thought was best. His wisdom. And lastly, everything. Becoming convinced of his love. I can't speak this for you. But I can say for me, I know this, and it doesn't mean that there's not going to be sorrow, pain, heartache, struggle, wrestle, but nothing can come into my life that has not first been filtered through the hands of his love. I believe that with all of my heart. Therefore, I have an eternal hope. Because I see that whatever's going on, even its peril and nakedness and persecution and all these things, I know that it's working out together for my good because I am called according to his purpose. And he loves me and I love him. Hope. And Scripture says in Romans 8 also, we're saved by hope. So do you, as we move forward, do you believe in God's sovereignty? Do you believe in his wisdom, even if he doesn't turn things out the way you're wanting them to? Do you believe that he loves you? Because we're going to be talking about some deals. And sometimes there's some deals that are made. And you look back and think, I think that was a bad deal. And he says, well, you hadn't gotten to the end of it yet. So, God is looking for this passionate love from our hearts. He's looking for us to be in love with him and to trust him. Now, I was thinking recently, there's several things that have come up that have made me think this way, and even going back through some things that the Lord spoke in my life way back when. But there's a president right now that wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. Isn't that what it's called, The Art of the Deal? I've never read it. You know, now listen, as I say this, I'm not giving credence to one party or another, or who's president or who's not. I'm just trying to make a point. One of the reasons he's in office is because people wanted somebody that can fix economy or fix and change things and things like that. He's a businessman, and one of the arguments about him, he knows how to make a deal. I want to tell you right now, I don't know how to make a deal. I lose every time. I buy at the top and I sell at the bottom. You know, the last several. Matter of fact, one of the things that I find myself encouraged by, when we bought our house 10 years ago, we bought it at the top of the market, right before it crashed. But I remember when we bought it, I pulled up into the driveway, and I just happened to be hearing on Christian radio, who's the financial guy?
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey. They had a little excerpt from Dave Ramsey, and he said, most people sell their house and move up to on average every 3 years. And he said, in order for a house to be an investment, you need to have it for at least 10 years. That's what he said back then. And I remember praying, Lord, I literally remember sitting in front of my driveway as I'm coming in when we first bought our house. I was by myself, and I just heard that. I thought, I've never lived in any place more than 10 years. I've never lived in any place 10 years, even growing up. And I thought, Lord, I pray you help us to live here 10 years. I just say that to say I've never made the right deal. And even going into a car dealership, I'm one of those people, I know, sucker. I know they're going to, I know they're going to get all my money. And I'll even talk to people. All right, now what should I do when I go in there? Well, don't do this and do this, and I'll go in there and I'll pound my hand up. Listen, no. Next thing I know, I'll walk out and I've given them everything they wanted and I've signed everything they've asked me to sign. I'm not a deal maker. But if you're not a deal maker, you need to know the deal maker. If you don't know anything about cars, you better know the guy who runs the car dealership. Right? Okay? And all through the Word of God, it actually talks about deals, conditions, trade, value. One of the things that caused me to think about this is last week or 2 weeks ago when we were reading about Paul in Philippians 3. And it's funny, you don't realize this. God's saying things to me in the midst of me saying things to you. And I was reading Philippians 3 to y'all, and you know what it said? I count all these things lost. And what stood out to me as I was saying it, for the value. And I remember stopping at value. The value. He looked at his relationship with Christ as a greater value than anything else. He found value in that. Let me ask you this. If you say, I find value in you. Michael, I find value in you. I don't spend any time with you. And I'd rather go golfing. What am I saying?
You like golfing?
If I say, I find value in you, but I give you a Sunday service once a week, and then I walk away from that. Paul said, I count everything lost for the value of knowing you. Look with me in Revelation chapter 3. And as we look at this church in Revelation chapter 3, it was pointed out to me by somebody that, and I haven't thought about it in this light, but they said, and they were making the point, in the first church in chapter 2, you see a passionate love. You see, and they related it to events and processes. And they said, most of the church right now is living for events. From one church service to another church service. From one conference to another conference. Trying to make it to this. And this is where God is. Even here. In a small way, this is an event. This isn't everyday life what's going on right here. This is a moment when we're getting away from those things. We're being encouraged by fellowship. We're being encouraged in the Word. We're having a time of worship. And it's hopefully a moment of peace to kind of regroup spiritually, maybe. But you know what? Life is lived out in the process. It's lived out on the days when you show up at home and you go to work and you're dealing with relationships. That's where the process of life is. My wife and I have had events in our life. We've had 7 births that were events. We've had moments that were overjoyed and moments that were very, very sad. But most of our life is really lived out in the mundaneness of sitting and having coffee together. We're driving somewhere together. Sometimes talking, sometimes not talking. But it's the process in which we get to know each other. In Psalms, I believe it's 103, but it says, Moses knew God's ways, but the children of Israel knew his acts. The children of Israel got to experience the Red Sea. They had a crisis. God met them. They had an event. The children of Israel got to see the wood put in the bitter waters. There was a crisis, an event, and God met them there. Remember we read John chapter 2? The people gathered around Jesus because they saw his signs and wonders, but he didn't entrust himself to them because he knew what was in their heart. They were looking for an event relationship. They were looking for another conference, something a sign to happen, something to go on. But it says Moses knew his ways. Moses went up into the mountain to spend time with him. Do you know that in that place where Moses went up to the mountain, he said, I want you to prepare and sanctify all the people to come up into the mountain. But they wouldn't go. When they saw the mountain burning with fire, they didn't want the responsibility of preparing their heart to meet God. So you know what they said? Moses, you go hear him for us. And so often we're the same way. Listen, I don't want the responsibility of walking with him every day. I'd rather show up on Sunday, but I'd rather cuss on Monday. I would rather show up here and raise my hands and say amen, and I trust the Lord. But when I walk out, I want to do my own practices, my own way, and do my own selfish thing. Moses had a passion for God. He wanted to know the heart of God. He was willing to prepare his heart to go up into the mountain to meet with God. They said, you hear him for us. God doesn't want. His intention from the very beginning was to have a nation of priests. We are a many-membered body. And God has different gifts. Their function in the body is not to rule, but to serve. His intention is for all of us to hear God and to be united in the fear of the Lord together. There are no big shots. But so often we don't want the responsibility of preparing my heart. And so you go hear him for us. So in Revelations, the first church, we really look at this. They were pointing out this. It starts off with an event church, a moment church, a passionate love church. Something happened. But they lost that love through the process of life. Again, you just consider this was something that I was hearing shared. And I thought, that's interesting. And I can tell you for my life, I didn't grow up that way. I can't give you a date and time when I got saved. And sometimes I envy those who can. Their life was in the pit. And God miraculously did something. Listen, like one of my friends, a light showed up and he said, it didn't say, all I knew is in that moment God loved me and something happened in that moment. And he always goes to that moment. That was the beginning place. I can't give you a beginning place with me. I started crying out to the Lord. I knew I was desperate. God began sending people into my life. I began being drawn to the Word. I began to seek the Lord. There was a lot of falling down and getting up. And there's certain times when I felt like I really heard the Lord. But my whole journey has been much more of a process journey. It's been a journey of getting to know Him and kind of having moments with Him. But I haven't really had the lightning flash moment. I think in some ways when we look at Laodicea, where one church had a passionate love and lost it, the other one never had it. They could run church without Jesus. They knew the traditions. They grew up in the midst of it. They knew what to do. They knew the words. They knew the language. But they didn't have the love. Revelations chapter 3, in verse 14. To the angel of the church of Laodicea write, the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God, says this, I know your deeds. And this is what we're going to talk about, but I want you to know. He says this to every one of the churches. We are not hidden by the grace of God. We're not so covered in the blood that Jesus does not know our deeds. He knows what's going on. He's aware. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. Because you say, I am rich. Now listen, this is within the church. And it doesn't necessarily mean they had a lot of money. They felt comfortable in their journey. They knew enough. They had enough experiences. They felt settled. You say, I'm rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing. And you do not know that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. And here's what he says in verse 18. I advise you. All right, so think about this. What if he's saying to us, I'm going to give you some advice. I'm going to advise you. Buy gold from me. Now let me say this. Is buying a sort of a deal? Is it a transaction? Is he telling you to buy from me something that I'm going to give you? He begins to use that kind of language. He says, buy from me gold refined in the fire so that you may become rich. And buy from me white garments so that you may be clothed yourself, and that the shame of your nakedness will not be revealed. Buy from me eye salve to anoint your eyes so that you may see. Those whom I love I reprove and discipline. Therefore be zealous and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Now listen to this story. Here's this Laodicean church. They think they know everything. And he says, wait a minute. Let me give you some advice. You don't know everything. Let me give you some advice. You don't have all wisdom. Let me give you some advice. Buy from me gold. Buy from me white garments. Buy from me eye salve that you might be able to see. And then he says, I'm standing at the door and knocking. Why? Because I want to come into you and have fellowship. You know what he says I'm doing? Will you open to me and let me fellowship with you? So often, if we really get down to our Christian journey, we wouldn't say this outwardly, or maybe even think it, but if we look at the way we live our life, God is distant. We believe in Him, but it doesn't look like He's out necessarily helping me all the time. I mean, it looks like He's got to be somewhere else. And He's saying, no, I'm God with you. I'm actually with you, and I'm knocking at the door. Will you fellowship with me? And we're going to see why that's necessary in a moment, especially when it comes to buying and trading. Why it's necessary to open up the door and to fellowship with Him. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door. Now listen, He's speaking to the whole, whoever these Laodiceans are. But He says, listen, if anyone in there, if any one of you will open the door, I will come in and fellowship with you. We can all do it, but if just one will, He says. If any one of you, I will come in and fellowship with He with me. Verse 21. He who overcomes, you know what that he who overcomes is? He who does whatever it takes. Let me tell you what I did. And again, I hope it applies to everybody. But you know, if none of this applies to anybody but me, I'm telling you, I'm reading my mail. When my wife and I were sitting this week, I began to study and read some of these things and think through some things. And even one of the things I thought about, and I just saw it today, I was walking through some store or something. Oh, I was in the grocery store. And I was walking out and I saw a Monopoly game. A Monopoly game. Of course, my mind was already running with buying and selling and relating that to some things. And as I saw that, listen, how many of us, now again, I got a little ADD, so playing Monopoly for like 8-10 hours, I'm done after about an hour. But for the first hour, I love feeling like a millionaire. I'll buy a park place. I'll put an apartment there. I'll take your money. Oh, yeah. But you know what? I can walk away from that and I still got my money in my pocket. I haven't lost anything. Even if I lose the game and go to jail and whatever, I actually haven't lost anything. It's just fun playing and acting like I'm a businessman, which I'm not. There are deals that we make in life that you can't go back and do over again. And there are things that go on in our journey that we can't redo this trade. Most of it's for keeps when we're making these deals and decisions that we're making and choices that we're making. And I told Rebecca as I said, listen, the word is no good if I don't act upon it. And you're going to hear me say this, you're going to say, he's been saying that for 3 years. I'm doing the best I can. God help me. But I said, you know what? When we moved, there's this one little room that we've been trying to figure out what to do with. I said, that room needs to be set aside for prayer and reading and a place of quietness. Not business, not bills. Set aside because it's there and we've got the availability of it. Completely set aside for that. I need a place where I can be still. And you need a place where you can be still. Because I can talk all I want about prayer, but if I'm not willing to value it, then I'm not going to do it. He says, overcome means to do whatever it takes to have communion with God. Think about the things that... Listen, isn't this crazy? And I don't mean to put a hope... Lord, help me not to put an oppression on everybody. We talk about prayer and communion and being with God, but how come this is our debate every day? Oh, I don't have more than 5 minutes. We do have more than 5 minutes. And I'm going to tell you this. I will wake up. I've kind of changed that. I usually stay up late after I put everybody to bed and I've had fellowship with Rebecca and she's ready to go to bed and I'm tired. I'll go work out at the gym at 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. That's important to me. I sit in a car all the time. I feel like I need to move my blood and I need to move. I'm going to feel better if I exercise. That's my makeup. Do I make that same time? Not for preparing a Bible study to come here. For meditation and being still and considering God, acknowledging Him. And I would like to tell you that's an affirmative. But so often I find myself saying, okay, just 3 minutes. Matter of fact, I found this program that does it real fast, and I'll just go through. We get caught up into that world. What do we value? What do we put value on? He says does whatever it takes. Now, here's an illustration I heard, and the more I thought about it, that's so good, so I hope I can share it the same way. Your purse. If we were going to make a trade here, and I was going to ask you, will you give me that purse for whatever I have in my pocket and everything in it? Full keeps, no give backs. I'll give you what's in my pocket if I can have everything in your purse and the purse.
He ain't got nothing in his pocket.
You can have it.
See, I'm in the wrong crowd. Nobody here has anything. But think about this. Well, here's how I started with at the apartments. And I knew this lady that was sitting up front because she's told me her story a couple times. And she's been married twice and has loved both men that she's been married to dearly. They both died. And she has both wedding rings on her hand. Oh. And I said, what can I give? Is that ring, if I asked you for your ring and your jewelry, how much would you sell it for? And she just, and I said, how about $200,000? Would you sell it for $200,000? There was nothing that I could give her. And looking into her eyes, I believe that to be true. There's nothing I could give her because that ring was of more value than anything that I could possibly give her. In our life, listen, what she said was, listen, this has little value to me. You want it? The people in Hebrews chapter 11, let's read this real quick, which was a great answer. Hebrews chapter 11. In verse 13, speaking about those who came before the cross, all these died in faith without receiving the promises, but having seen them and having welcomed them from a distance, and having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a country of their own. And indeed, if they had been thinking of that country from which they went out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, and He has prepared a city for them. If you haven't determined what is not for sale in your life, I'm going to tell you what, there's going to be the opportunity to sell it. As they left and set their heart on a kingdom not made with hands, it said had they had any interest in going back where they came from, they would have been given every opportunity. Listen, if you told me, Andy, would you sell me your watch and your ring for $15? I would say no. You know, this is from my wife. It's like my fifth one I've lost. I can't tell you how many of them. When it gets winter, my hand gets cold. And then this, I think Carla bought me this years ago. But now if you said to me, how about $200,000? There you go. You got it right there. And I don't think that they will mind. And I could use that money for something else. And I'd probably hand it over. You know. Listen, I might not do it for 15, but if you keep rising the price, I might find a place. The very thing I said I wouldn't sell, it might actually be for sale. If there's things in your life in regard to your relationship with God, you've got to come up to a decision if it's for sale or not. What's worth taking you back? Because if there's something you'll go back to, the devil will make sure you have that opportunity. If there's something you want in that place where you came from, and you're not quite sure of what you're heading toward, you'll make that transition.
Sodom and salt.
Listen, when Jesus was tested at the temple, why don't you turn this bread? Why don't you jump off this thing? Matter of fact, if you'll just, I'll give you the whole world if you'll just worship me. Jesus wasn't for sale. You know why? Because He valued. Let me ask you this. I've seen so many in the midst of persecution and continued struggle turn their back on the Lord. Because of the hardships of life. Where's God? Where's God in the midst of my pain and my suffering? Why does this person I love have to die? Why does this happen or that happen? Do you trust me? Here's the other point that I'll make in regard to, I haven't read this Art of the Deal, I don't have any clue what it talks about. But I do know this. The only hope that I have is in the knowledge of the deal maker. Now, if, as I said to this lady, if I could tell you, if I could ask you for your ring and that jewelry, and I'll give you $20 for it, and I can promise you this, that at the end of the day, you're going to be better off. Will you make that deal with me? Nope. Now, what she missed out on was the opportunity to have $20 and all her stuff, because I don't want her stuff. The one thing I was wanting from her is, will you trust me that you're going to be better off after you make this deal? God in our life, if you look through this word, you're going to find everything in this word is a crazy deal that makes no sense. He says, you want Jericho? Walk around the city for 7 days. And on the seventh day, walk around 7 times. I'm not making that deal. I'll look like an idiot. You want me to walk around the city 1 time and be quiet for 6 days, and on the 7th day you want me to walk around 7 times, and then you want me to shout, and then you're going to give me the city. Oh yeah, that makes sense. if you want to live, here's the deal I'm making with you. You're going to have to die. Wait a minute. Everybody in this world is saying, if I want to live, then I need to push forward. I need to take advantage. I need to grab a hold of life. And you're telling me, the deal you're making me, is that in order to live, I have to die? Do you trust me? Because we can come into church and Bible study every Sunday and every Wednesday, and we can sing about trust. But when we walk out of this place, if we're unwilling to make that deal with Him out there, then it doesn't matter. What if He's saying to you right now, He's saying, listen, in your situation, it's not about that person changing in order to make you happy. You're going to have to die. Will you trust me? Will you take that deal on the sole promise that I'm going to do you good in the end? In order to be first, you got to be last. If you want to be the leader, you got to be the servant. Lord, I'm always at the bottom. I'm always the doormat. Why do I have to? I'm only asking you to trust me. Will you trust me to make this deal? And you're not going to trust the Lord to make that deal if you don't believe He has your best interest. Let me tell you this. I don't know, just looking at the mittens over here, I don't know. I believe this to be an accurate statement. They may look at me and go, don't do that. I believe their son-in-law, he would take care of me. If I could get into their world, his world, and buy the kind of cars he sells, if I could get into that world, he would give me the best deal he could possibly give me. I could completely trust him and sign papers whether I knew what they are or not.
Amen. I can vouch for that.
Because I too do totally trust him as a friend that he would not take advantage of me, and he would do everything he could to give me the best deal possible. When I walk into my dealership, I don't know them. And I try to do the game, but I don't know what I'm doing. And maybe they do give me a good deal, but every time I think, something in me says I'm getting taken advantage of. How often in our relationship with God are we saying, I don't think you're fair. Lord, somehow in this deal you're going to get me. Somehow in this deal, if I follow you, I'm not going to come out ahead. And the only way that's going to change is if we will take the time to get to know Him. The only way you're going to trust God's deal toward you is to spend time with Him. And everything in your life is vouching for that time. If you find value in that, you're going to have to fight for it in the day. And if you will fight for it, now here's the last thing I'll share. 1 Timothy chapter 4, you'll note it says, bodily exercise profits little. Something like that. It does profit. Listen, I've got to have some exercise in my life. My back starts getting tight. All these things start happening. But he said, godliness profits everything. Now think about that. If you really believe that godliness, if he said to you, it profits you. Here's the profit. I am your stockbroker. And I'm telling you right now, nobody has ever heard of Walmart or Apple. And I'm telling you right now, it's an up-and-coming company. If you will just invest in it, it's going to pay dividends for the rest of your life. How many people do you think did not listen to that advice? Who looked back and said, oh, I remember when they told me that. What if God, as this stockbroker, is saying, listen, what does it gain a man if he gains the whole world? Or what does it profit him if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? And he says to you and I, he says, listen, I'm giving you advice right now. He's saying to you, if you will exercise your heart toward godliness, it will profit in all things. It says all things. All right, well, how do I do that? I read, okay, it's not about reading your Bible. It's not about spending an hour in prayer. To be godly means to spend time with God. And whatever that means, it means acknowledging Him in your day. To be godly means to spend time with God. You become like the one you spend time with. So I want to challenge you today. There are trades that we're making all the time, and these trades are for keeps. And we've all made some bad trades. That's why God came in the person of the cross and demonstrated His love, and that while we were yet in sin, Christ died. But I'm going to tell you this. He says, listen, if you will open the door to me, and you will take that time to let me come in and fellowship with you, I will teach you how to make the right deal and the right choices. I'll lead you in the right way. Buy from me gold. Come to me. What value do you and I place on our relationship with the Lord? Is our relationship with the Lord revolving around events? Let me get to Bible study. Let me get to church. Or is it based on the process of walking through whatever He has with me and learning His ways as I walk through it? God, what are you trying to say to me? Listen, my wife, in the midst of her sickness, she got to a place and said, I've been to the doctor, I've had this, I've gone again and had this. God's trying to tell me something. And so she stopped and she said, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? And she had this sense in her heart, you are undisciplined in regard to your relationship with me and in regard to your health. There are things that you can do to help yourself, but you won't do it. And so you know what she said when she heard that? She received that advice and she took action upon it. And whatever's going on in our world and everything falling apart, I'm going to read. I have committed to God that I'm going to be still for a certain period of time and be still before Him. What value are you and I placing on relationship? What's the price tag on our relationship with the Lord? Is there anything in our life that's for sale? What is it going to take to make you turn back? What if God doesn't fix that situation you're in? What if God doesn't resolve that relationship? Are you going to go on with Him? Are you going to say, Lord, in this, change me? In this, draw me into fellowship with you? And I'm going to tell you this, I learned this from Walter Gaddy, who's passed away a long time ago. He said, in everything, I'm the problem, He's the answer. And as long as you're looking for God to fix your situation or to fix other people, you're never going to be changed. He's asking you, and you can't do it for somebody else. He's saying, I want you to open up. Whoever will open up the door to me. It can be all of you, or it can be one of you. But if somebody will open up the door, I will come in and I will begin to fellowship with Him. And the more you get to know me, the more you will trust me. Even if I tell you I'm going to give you $15 for all of this. Because you know that He has your best. And He is going to make it right. I want to tell you this, there's a fallacy. All things work together for good. It doesn't say for everybody.
He didn't say all things were good.
All things work together for good to those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. I'm telling you this, as you draw into a relationship with God, everything you're going through, He's going to use it for good. He's going to turn it for good. He promised to. The one thing He's asking of you is, will you open up to me? And I'm going to tell you what, there's a lot of things we don't have. But the one thing every one of us has is time. And what we do with that time. Use it wisely. Well, Father, we come to you. Lord, just reminded where we started. The one thing you won't do with your power is not allow us choice. You want a passionate love. But that can only come from a heart that chooses you. We can see examples in the Scriptures of men and women who chose you. And we can see the outcome of their life. We can also see the stories of men and women who did not choose you. I think of Demas, who had the privilege of sitting under Paul and hearing his teachings, and yet it says he walked away from this world and its stuff. Lord, may you find in our lives a passionate devotion to you, constantly building relationships, seeking relationship, finding value in quietness. And I want to be the first to confess, I have not allowed that to be of utmost value to me. And so I just pray you continue to draw me to that place of richness and fellowship. In Jesus' name, amen.